2025 has been a great year for video games. The Game Award nominations are surprisingly stacked and the hype levels going into 2026 are at an all-time high. But as a patient gamer, my list of games beat this year likely looks drastically different to most. I was still able to check out a few major releases on day one, but the bulk of my time spent gaming this year has been in the name of severe backlog clearance. I, like many, have a huge gaming backlog, but I actually fully intend on beating it, and a major motivation in doing so was making this Tales from the Backlog series, where I chronicle every game and forever preserve my experience in a video like the one you're watching right now. This is a collection of each video entry I've made throughout the year where I review and rank every single game before crossing it off my backlog completely. Forgive any inconsistencies in quality throughout the video, as I was still largely figuring things out earlier on in the year, but with that being said, please enjoy. The first game on this list is actually a VR game I beat just before 2024 ended, Arizona Sunshine Remake. VR is still quite new to me, but it's in a really cool place at the moment, at least for me it is. I'm basically just playing catch up with all the acclaimed games that dropped throughout the VR life cycle, and this is one of the big releases and probably the definitive zombie survival shooter experience on the platform. Now, I loved this game so much. It was so intense at times, and I played it in a pretty cramped space, so anytime I accidentally bumped into something, it sent a jolt down my spine. That feeling when you need to reload all your guns and the zombie's approaching you, so you panic reload and end up struggling to get the clip in, it's really something else. It's not a long game, and in terms of mechanics and story, etc., it's all pretty bare bones. The main pull of an Arizona Sunshine is the standard zombie gaming experience, but in virtual reality, which adds so many dimensions to the thrill and overall enjoyment to a title like this. I loved every second of Arizona Sunshine simply as an experience, to be honest, but I do think there's some room for improvement here, especially on the story front. Marvel's Spider-Man. This was my first true game of 2025, and I actually made a whole video about it. Spider-Man, for me, like many, is a character I hold very close to my heart. Growing up, what this guy meant to me cannot be understated to this day. The first Raimi film is still my favorite movie of all time, and that probably isn't going to change. With that in mind, this game brought a smile to my face multiple times throughout my playthrough. I got 100% on everything, and honestly, I can see myself replaying this game often. It wasn't perfect as a video game overall, but all that really tells me is that this nearly perfect experience can be improved upon with future entries, and that excites me greatly. So I think as I go along listing each game, I'll actually give it a quick placement on how I'm feeling about it with this mini tier list here. So both Arizona Sunshine and Spider-Man secure an A tier placement. Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. So this was actually my secondary game I was playing in the background around the same time I was playing Spider-Man. Also technically a replay, as I had already beaten vanilla Diablo 3 many years ago, but this is my first time experiencing Reaper of Souls. I love this style of ARPG, and Diablo 3 is a game I remember very fondly, despite many fans feeling sour on it, calling it a diet World of Warcraft in terms of identity, etc. It's all valid, but as my introduction to Diablo, I didn't have anything to compare this game to, so I just took it for what it was. A good time. The Reaper of Souls chapter specifically feels a lot more darker and gothic compared to the main game. Also, it's just easily the game's best chapter in my opinion. I really liked these levels and bosses, and this endgame is set up for like a mega time sink that I just didn't feel with vanilla Diablo 3 as much. Great game, and a worthy replay, if a bit on the easier side than I recall, on hard mode with a Necromancer. This one's getting a B. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, I'm not the biggest Indiana Jones fan by any means, but I do really enjoy those movies, especially The Last Crusade, and this game is the greatest Indiana Jones film that was never made, until now. The fact that I do genuinely have a love for Indiana Jones undoubtedly amplifies this overall experience, but just on an objective gameplay front, these puzzles, these tombs, this story, this world, these performances, all top draw, and the visual fidelity here, it really packs a hefty punch, and just as well it came bundled for free with my RTX 4070 purchase. But all that aside, the biggest compliment I can truly give this game is it's big. That's not something that would often entice me when it comes to gaming, but in this sense, big doesn't mean filler. It doesn't mean wasting your time. In the Great Circle, big means lived in, it means expansive, it means player choice, it means scale, it means everything this game set out to do, it does epically with nothing held back. A game that lives up to the title. The Great Circle is great. Lego 2K Drive. I was really excited for this one. Lego games kind of function as my breather between more intense gaming experiences, and from what I saw, this all looked super solid. Big Lego Forza Horizon vibes I was getting, but off the rip I was having performance issues with this one. I struggled to find a fix, but eventually it seemed to just sort itself out down the line. Those initial few hours though, I was seeing dips to 4 frames per second once every few minutes, which especially for a racing game is a huge bummer. That aside, once I was able to fully enjoy everything this game was attempting to do, I still found myself a little disappointed. Whilst it is a visual treat for the eyes and absolutely filled with a diverse variety of content to enjoy, I kind of just relegated this to a podcast game. I did win all my races pretty much on first attempt, but there was some challenge there. The different vehicle types made for a dynamic gameplay loop, but still the base game was ultimately just visual background for me as I listened to podcasts or watched YouTube videos. I have no desire to continue playing upon rolling credits here, but I do sense I might want the visual stimulation of a Lego 2K Drive down the line maybe, if Sacred Symbols drop another 6-hour episode, but this one's getting a C. Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, this game, like the first Spider-Man entry, got a dedicated video on my channel where I really pondered the potential of this character, and I'm a big Miles Morales fan, and as a fan I was satisfied with this game. It isn't a perfect follow-up, but does see significant improvements over the original in many areas, most importantly gameplay. The story, however, is a step down, and that's really what holds this game back in my view. Many gamers tend to prioritize gameplay first and foremost, with story being more of a priority with narrative-centric games like Life is Strange or Until Dawn. For me, I'm all about whatever the devs choose to prioritize, and because Miles Morales is clearly meant to be a narrative-heavy, cinematic, story-centric experience, I put the gameplay and story on equal footing in terms of importance. I don't expect Citizen Kane with Miles Morales, but Spider-Man has always told great stories. Even the first Insomniac game tells a great story, so when the sequel's narrative is just good, or sometimes maybe even less than good, I feel a sense of regression, not to sound negative, because I did genuinely enjoy this game a lot. I'm just very passionate about Spider-Man and very much want Insomniac to craft the best versions of these characters they possibly can. That being said, this was a solid B-tier game. Finally, the much anticipated follow-up to TGA's Game of the Year 2021, Split Fiction. Now, I was very excited for this game, and I feel like it dropped at the perfect time around my sister's birthday, and we were both itching to jump back into a Haze-like co-op experience together. And to the surprise of nobody, they did it again. Whilst the novelty might have worn off a bit with this entry, maybe providing my least favourite narrative pull of their 3 most recent games, it's clear just bouncing around from level to level that these guys have mastered their dynamic, constantly refreshing 2-player gameplay formula here. It's quite awe-inspiring at times. Split Fiction feels great to play and does provide slightly more challenge than their previous games, which I welcome. Not all levels are made equal. I found some leaving a little to be desired, and others felt like they overstayed their welcome. I really didn't care much for the characters or their arcs, but I'm all in on this game's spectacle. That last level in particular was phenomenal, and overall I'd say this game was another successful victory lap for what's becoming a juggernaut studio in gaming right now. Split Fiction can hold a solid B tier also. Kicking things off with what was my most anticipated game of the year, Doom: The Dark Ages. Now, Doom is hands down my favourite video game series of all time, and 2016 was my game of the generation for Gen 8, followed closely by Eternal. So my hype levels for this game were insane. I spared no expense, copped the statue and everything, and even have a dedicated video on the way. But all that being said, did I like it? Come on. I played this game to death. I've run it back 3 times now, gotten every achievement, and genuinely see myself enjoying this title for many years to come. It's Doom. The beauty for me is there's not much to it. You slaughter demons with a variety of awesome weapons, and it feels great. This is the weightiest, meatiest, crunchiest Doom we've had yet, and the levels of aura farming they stuffed into this game are borderline disgusting. I do have a lot more to say about the general reaction and discourse surrounding this game, but as for my personal experience, I think I was doomed to love it. I really do miss this era of Star Wars media before Disney was force feeding us Star Wars content like Happy Meals. A AAA Star Wars game like this felt like an event. This franchise's video games in general have a history for being way better than they have any right to. Like the title suggests, in this game you unleash the Force, and that's not an understatement. This is truly a power trip fantasy. I don't care if this stuff's not canon anymore. It's canon to me. Starkiller is ridiculously OP as an instrument for us, the player, to essentially just go on a Jedi killing spree across this diverse collection of galactic biomes. It's beautiful, and although the story isn't anything spectacular, it does serve its purpose, and I was invested enough throughout the pretty short campaign. I will say I did play this on my Steam Deck, and I had to unlock the frame rate to play at 60 frames per second, but this caused a minor glitch with my Force Levitate ability, which would, when idle, just slowly lift objects upward. Easily ignorable, but worth mentioning. All in all, I had a lot of fun with Force Unleashed, and I'll be playing the sequel in due time. This game exists within a great in-between for LEGO games in general. It still had remnants of that classic LEGO formula, but was also one of the early adopters of their innovation era, where they began experimenting with voice acting and the general structure of their previously repetitive gameplay loop. I don't really have a definitive stance on whether I prefer old LEGO games or new LEGO games. It all boils down to whatever I'm in the mood for, but upon playing this, I honestly just wanted a recap of my favorite film trilogy of all time. On a sheer enjoyment front, I had a blast venturing through Middle Earth here as a fan, and I was far more satisfied with this transition from film to LEGO than I was with Harry Potter or Pirates of the Caribbean. Whilst this is technically a replay because I did own and play this game as a child back on the PS3, I never actually got past the Two Towers, so this was my first time rolling credits on LEGO Lord of the Rings, and I really liked it. Returning to a galaxy far, far away, this one was a very spontaneous cop for me. A combination of the May 4th sales, the spectacular second season of Andor, Episode 3's re-release at cinemas, and the huge wave of Battlefront 2 content that began flooding my timeline. This game was everywhere, and they got me. I honestly had an itch to pick this game up for years, but never took the plunge because there's always this fear when hopping into a multiplayer-centric game that released ages ago that the servers would be dry or the lobbies filled with hackers. But seeing everyone still playing this epic Battlefield-coded Star Wars simulator was all the confirmation I needed. I ended up sinking many hours into this game's multiplayer, playing both at home and on the go via my Steam Deck, where its performance was shockingly good, and the game does have a skill curve, but I never stopped finding the fun in these large-scale battles, even when I was on a 10+ death streak. It is genuinely gorgeous and awe-inspiring. Just reliving these iconic battles as a Star Wars fan would have been enough, but I did also roll credits on the game's campaign, and this was perfectly fine. I don't really have much bad to say about it because I wasn't really that invested story-wise, but it basically just felt like I was playing a PvE mode, and some of those hero levels in particular were a blast to play through. I hear the DLC's awful, so I'm looking forward to checking that out too. I'm far from an expert when it comes to fighting games, but a walking encyclopedia when it comes to DC superheroes. My want and need for a DC game that wasn't just a Batman title ultimately led to me picking up both Injustice games at long last. Off the bat, this is my preferred presentation when it comes to fighting games in general. Give me a grand, epic cinematic campaign with plenty of cutscenes and a story I can really get into. It might be despised today for its influence on hero media at large, but in isolation, I really love this original Injustice storyline. Gameplay is not Dragon Ball FighterZ level of fluid in combat feel, but does take a more calculated, methodical approach, which was still satisfying once a character clicked. I will say, although short in length, the novelty of seeing these DC legends duke it out with each other never wore on me. Third entry in what has become my go-to tower defense game on PC. I absolutely fell in love with this series, and alas, I got that caveman itch to set up a flurry of unique traps and take on hordes of orcs, so I decided to sink my teeth into this, and it might be the best one yet. Some of the most creative maps, hands down my favorite collection of levels and enemy variety here, were all top draw. I haven't gotten into any of the DLC as of yet, but just the vanilla content here alone has kept me well fed, both base campaign and drastic steps. There's a feeling playing this game captures for me when I go back to a map I previously struggled with, holding a batch of new upgraded traps to help me exploit a choke point I couldn't fully utilize before, and just completely dominating wave after wave, making it look easy. Everyone's got that one game series that's just pure comfort food, and Orcs Must Die is yet to disappoint for me. Yet. closing out this batch with yet another LEGO game, which is one more than I would typically play in such close proximity. But after watching the new Superman film, I just really wanted to play as the Man of Steel, and this was the best I could do besides Injustice. Replaying LEGO Batman 2 on my Steam Deck brought me a real surge of joy. Hands down my all-time favorite LEGO title. These levels all push my nostalgia buttons, and frankly, I'd rank this high amongst Batman games in general. It's safe, it's familiar, and it's fun. But gaming for me in general slowed down significantly these past few months. Thankfully, the Steam Deck did come in clutch, and I'm feeling very enthusiastic about the remainder of 2025 as a patient gamer. A generous gift from my close friend who absolutely loved this game. Now, whilst I did make a dedicated video inspired by this title, I didn't actually go over my thoughts on the game itself. So is it good? Did I have fun? Am I satisfied as a historical Potterhead? And yes, to all of that. This game is super familiar for any seasoned gamer like myself. The appeal here doesn't lie in originality. It's all very textbook generic open world fantasy stuff, but the sheer charm and entice of the Wizarding world is enough to make the 50+ hour campaign worthwhile. The IP is handled with a genuine love and care despite the jankiness that persists throughout. I will say things started off a bit rough for me though, but once I got into the swing of things, I was quite literally living in Hogwarts. By the end, I do feel this game dragged a bit. Maybe, it overstayed its narrative welcome, although I'm sure for many others they'd want an additional 500 hours. All I could hope for in a sequel besides the obvious Quidditch and Animagus inclusions is just a general quality of life improvement. That stuff can go a long way and can be the distinction between a good game and a great one. Also, for a game based on an IP regarded highly within the world of literature, the story here is kinda weak. I did make a full video on this game and every other entry in the Insomniac Spider-Man series, so I'll keep this one brief, but as far as sequels go, I don't envy the uphill battle this game had. The cultural U-turn on Spider-Man 2 online is expected, but the weaponization of this game in the culture war against wokeness and gaming is beyond pathetic. I loved this game. This feels like a true AAA experience through and through. It feels like a major event as you're playing it, and it fundamentally improves on so much from the previous games, which were already near perfect experiences for me. I will note the second half isn't as strong as the first, and the lack of DLC does sour my overall experience with the game, and I'm not feeling as much replay value towards this title compared to Spider-Man 2018 as of right now. But my hype levels for Spider-Man 3 remain at an all-time high. This was great. I do consider myself a Borderlands enthusiast, but nowhere near the level of dedicated I was when listening to 4-hour-long lore dumps on YouTube whilst going through Assault on Dragon's Keep many years ago. The formula is good enough to still be enjoyable today, but like they attempted here with Wonderlands, sometimes you just need to shake up the fundamentals and create a nice change of pace. I was not having a great time out the gate with Tiny Tina, but even then the love letter to D&D, the fantasy setting, the revamped overworld, the character creator and classes, plus the new emphasis on melee combat all appealed to me greatly. And though I did kinda zone out on the story whilst playing the odd quest here and there, it would actually capture my attention with something oddly captivating from time to time. Not frequently, but enough. I did have fun playing this game, but it will ultimately rank on the lower end of my pending Borderlands tier list. Now this is what I'm talking about. I grabbed the Mafia trilogy on a whim after liking what I saw of the Old Country at an award show, but never did it cross my mind how immersed I was about to be in this epic, classic crime saga. I heard it was short and expected a lesser GTA, but what I got was some of the best storytelling I had ever experienced in the medium. Characters and a world that felt alive and lived in. This game was so linear in the best way possible. I felt like I was quite literally along for the ride, and this journey spans many years, like it's truly an epic. Think greatest hits, Goodfellas meets The Godfather and all of that and some. In games like GTA or Red Dead, things can get so spectacle heavy that the impact of what's actually going on is lost on you. Mafia uses restraint to its advantage. Things almost start off mundane and then you get a little sprinkle of chaos throughout the earlier sections, but all of that only makes the impending madness later on all the more impactful. I played this game on the Steam Deck, which for some reason has no button prompts unless you play in desktop mode, so I kinda just had to play the guess game for a while, eating punches whilst trying to remember the parry buttons. Childhood classic. I spoke a bit about this one in my Steam Deck original Xbox video, but I used to play X-Men Legends as a kid at my local internet cafe, and just having a top-down view hero RPG like this on novelty alone entices me. I was in an X-Men mood, and it was actually X-Men 97 that made me want to rotate between Cyclops, Nightcrawler, and Storm, so I booted it up on the old Steam Deck, and wow. This game is hard. No beating around the bush. If you don't level up stuff properly, you can lock yourself into a near unwinnable situation with some of these early dungeons. Health is kind of rare, funds aren't super common, and this game will punish you. I experienced this especially during the earlier sections of the game, but with the advantage of save scumming, I was able to basically cheese my way into building a decent squad, which would hard carry me up until the final boss, which I found painfully unfun to fight. That might sound negative, but there was appeal to this super dated experience for me. Outside of the bright Gen 6 colors or the classic X-Men cartoon caliber plot, I just really liked playing as these characters. This is one of those games I enjoyed but couldn't honestly recommend to anyone without fair warning. That being said, Legends 2 is installed and waiting right now. It's been a while, but I was able to finally dust off my headset and play through a couple VR titles after a break from the virtual world, and I chose Metal Hellsinger as my comeback anthem. Mainly because I actually recall enjoying what I had already played of this game, but also the studio had just closed down and I wanted to pay my respects. I have little to no experience when it comes to rhythm games, but I would consider myself a pretty musical person, and I love heavy metal. I also love a good Doom-like. This game doesn't disappoint on the demon slaying front. I was having a blast just going through these levels, really getting into it, and even upon rolling credits, I found myself replaying a bunch of the missions. As a VR game, it didn't really do much for me, but just as an action-packed rhythm title, I was really enjoying this once I found the beat. There is a story here and it's fine, but really and truly the star of the show is the god tier soundtrack. Keeping with VR, I have a love-hate relationship with this sweat machine roguelike mech fighter. This was actually one of the earliest purchases I made on my VR headset, and at the time that I got the game, I didn't know it was a roguelike, and that feature alone would have probably swayed me away from it, which it did for a while. I beat the first boss and didn't touch this game for months, and upon giving it another try, I was killed immediately and lost all my stuff. This is my main issue with roguelikes. I just hate the feeling of lost progression. It's like deleting my save file, and this aspect of the game completely dominated my mindscape regarding it for a while, which is why I stopped even thinking about beating it and just tried to have some fun. Because this game is a lot of fun, genuinely some of the best combat VR mechanics I've experienced yet, and the level of creativity and how you can approach combat here is amazing. Once I was able to just get into it and appreciate the game for what it was, I found the fun, and with that I found victory. After many failed runs of struggle, I finally beat the first boss again, and then the second, and alas, the final boss was defeated. Now the real fun begins. It's been a minute since I last played a Firaxis game, but once you get that tactical itch, no studio does it better than these guys. Now, XCOM meets Marvel is a mighty elevator pitch, but this game mostly delivers on that front. The card play mechanics probably make for a better overall gameplay loop over the course of a 30-hour campaign, and the story is about as good as it needs to be. Far from peak Marvel narrative, but the fan service is off the charts. I want to say I love this game and leave it at that, but unfortunately certain design choices simply don't translate well here. Navigating certain systems in XCOM, for example, would have taken seconds, compared to the minutes this game forces. Manually running around the base every day to maintain and upgrade things, the forced daily cycle so that you need to sleep in between each mission, and the constant fluff and padding of character interactions. Like, sure, a lot of this stuff is optional, but you can miss out on a lot of important stuff by not engaging in this game's slice of life mechanics. By the end, if it wasn't directly tied to the main story, I would simply skip all the dialogue. And what's strange is the actual missions never stopped being fun for me. I just didn't enjoy all the stuff in between the missions past Act 1. I love this game so much, I made a full-blown video on the lost genre of manly games, heavily inspired by titles like Gears of War such as this. Truly the ideal blend of high-octane yet simplistic gameplay philosophy. It's very textbook, very 360 coded to my praises. I love games that strip things back to a more simpler era, where games could just be games, ridiculously explosive and over the top while still taking themselves semi-seriously. Not to mention the sheer satisfaction baked into this combat loop. Everything feels great. I'm honestly shocked Evil West didn't do better, because the franchise potential on this thing is huge, and I really enjoyed this game from start to finish. A VR title I actually started a while back but ended up putting down as I simply couldn't get into it then. But after getting my virtual reality gaming itch back and conquering both Metal Hellsinger and Underdogs, I was more than ready to dive back into this. And to nobody's surprise, I was wrong. Being in the right frame of mind when playing a game is so important, but also sometimes just maybe knowing a bit more about the game. I guess the fact that it's a bare bones sandbox experience on the surface turned me off initially, but going back into it with that knowledge, I was able to easily find the fun in this game's S-tier VR physics and combat loop. It really doesn't hold your hand, and once you've taken on the first boss, you've pretty much experienced all this game has to offer. Nevertheless, I was having a blast finding all sorts of satisfying and creative ways to destroy my enemies in this. I was a little disappointed with how the game ended. I feel a VR experience with these mechanics and like a genuine narrative could rival the likes of Arkham Shadow or Arizona Sunshine for me. But yeah, this was fun. This was the opposite of fun. In many ways, this game killed the Wii for me. It was the last game I bought before abandoning my Wii Mini over a decade ago, and upon rediscovering my Wii late this year, I had the urge to revisit this. A motion-controlled diet kart racer Sonic title sounds like an awesome game on paper, but this is still pretty bad. These controls are just awful, and it honestly never feels satisfying to play. Every win has an RNG tinge to it, but regardless, I was able to finally beat this game's second act after all these years, and even the final boss, which sucked. I don't like this game, and I will never play it again. Yeah. This Wii game from my childhood I actually recall having a good time with, despite the disappointing realization that it was a rail shooter. Something that doesn't bother me nearly as much today as it did back then. Regardless, I decided to give this one another spin also, and honestly it's pretty decent overall. I can appreciate the story a lot more today as a Resident Evil fan, but it's still not anything major since we're basically just recapping prior games on rails. But I found just laying in bed shooting zombies to be way more enjoyable this time around. I remember dropping this game after getting stuck on a boss which seemed impossible to me as a kid at the time, but it took me like 3 attempts on this playthrough, and that was only just around the halfway mark. Good game, far from great, but I finally beat it. Where have you been all my life? I mentioned pretty much all these Wii games on my recent Wii videos, but essentially this is the game I should have bought for my Wii all those years ago instead of Sonic Riders or Darkside Chronicles. Had I played Red Steel 2 as a child, I'm confident I would have remained a massive Nintendo fan, and that's not even to say that this is some kind of masterpiece or anything like that, because it isn't, but it's everything a 12-year-old me would ever want out of a Wii title. Rule of cool cyber western setting with a cowboy samurai protagonist complete with actual top-draw swordplay and free-moving gun combat, paired with a generic but serviceable story and a satisfying progression system. Bittersweet, but I have a feeling going into game collecting for the Nintendo Wii that not many titles will reach the gameplay heights of Red Steel 2. I mean, it's a Rabbids game. I have little to no experience with these guys outside of general pop culture, but this game functioned exactly as I needed it to, a mostly mindless collectathon oozing personality and style, even if it can get a bit loud sometimes. For me, turning the volume down and just autopiloting my way through these levels at night whilst listening to a podcast was the ideal way to go about enjoying this. Without that setup though, had I given this game my undivided attention, I think I might have split the disc in half. An ode to my first and last Rabbids game. I didn't hate it, but there you have it. Every single game I beat in 2025 didn't roll as many credits as 2024, but I think the overall quality made up for the quantity. The bulk of my gaming was done on PC with 9 games on desktop, 5 games on Steam Deck, and on my Xbox I beat 6 games with VR and Wii both tied for 4 each. A lot of games I planned to beat this year I didn't end up getting around to, but I'm gonna have them all extremely high on the priority scale going into 2026. I acquired 46 games this year, with 365 being spent on all of them combined, and only ended up beating 28, which doesn't seem too bad, but those extra 18 titles tend to stack up annually. So I intend to keep the purchases to a minimum next year, and hopefully I'll start to see my backlog drastically shrink again. The current backlog tally is around 66 games, but that is all for 2025's Tales from the Backlog. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been the Game Burrow, and adios.